I thought the hardest part of inheriting $28 million would be deciding what to do with the money. I was wrong. The hardest part was discovering the man. I had called my husband for years and had apparently been living a completely different life behind my back. I had not even told him about the inheritance. When the bank officer looked at my records and quietly said something, that made my entire world stop. "Ma'am, according to our records, you have been divorced for 8 months. I stayed completely still for 3 seconds. Then I did one thing my husband never expected. The inheritance came unexpectedly. A relative had left me a fortune worth approximately $28 million, and for the first few days, I could barely process what had happened. I did not tell my husband immediately because I wanted to make sure everything was legally verified before saying a word. I contacted the bank, reviewed the estate documents, and asked questions about how the money would be transferred and protected. I walked into the bank expecting paperwork. Instead, I walked into the most shocking conversation of my life. The bank officer checked my identification and began reviewing the account information. He suddenly became unusually quiet. Then he looked at me and said that there was a serious discrepancy involving my marital status. I thought there had been an administrative mistake. I told him that I was married. He looked back at the records and said that according to the information available to the bank, my divorce had been finalized 8 months earlier. I felt like the room had suddenly become silent. I asked him to check again because I knew I had never signed divorce papers. I had never appeared in court for a divorce hearing. My husband had never told me that he wanted a divorce. The officer did not accuse anyone of wrongdoing. He simply advised me to obtain official court records before making any decisions about the inheritance. That advice changed everything. I left the bank and immediately contacted a lawyer. The first thing the lawyer told me was that I should not confront my husband until the records had been verified. The next morning, we obtained the court documents. There it was. A divorce case had been filed in my name, but the signature on the paperwork was not mine. My lawyer told me that this could potentially involve identity fraud and that the situation needed to be investigated properly. Suddenly, the $28 million did not feel like a gift anymore. It felt like a spotlight shining directly on every secret. My marriage had been hiding. I started reviewing old financial records. Then I noticed something else. There were accounts and documents I had never seen before. There were transactions that made no sense. There were changes to financial information that I had never authorized. For the first time, I began wondering whether my husband had known about the inheritance before I did. I still did not confront him. Instead, I let the lawyer handle the investigation. A few days later, the evidence became even more disturbing. The divorce paperwork had been connected to information that should never have been available without authorization. My husband finally realized something was wrong when he noticed that I had stopped discussing money with him. He asked me what was happening. I looked at him and simply said that I had learned something about our marriage that I needed time to understand. He became nervous. Then he started asking questions about the inheritance. That was the moment I knew I had made the right decision by keeping quiet. He had not asked if I was okay. He had not asked why I was upset. His first concern was the money. My lawyer eventually advised me to separate my finances completely, secure my accounts, and let the appropriate authorities investigate the disputed records. I followed that advice. The inheritance was placed under proper legal protection, while the investigation continued. I also learned an important lesson. Money does not always change people. Sometimes it simply reveals who they already were. The greatest shock was not discovering that someone had attempted to change my legal status. The greatest shock was realizing that I had trusted someone who may have been planning for a future without me. I was still trying to build a future with him. I never told my husband where the $28 million was going. I never gave him access to the money, and I never confronted him without legal protection. Because that day at the bank taught me something I will never forget. When someone is willing to hide your own life from you, you cannot protect yourself by trusting them more. You protect yourself by finding the truth. The inheritance gave me financial freedom, but the bank officer gave me something far more valuable. A warning before it was too late. And that was the moment I stopped asking whether my husband had betrayed me. I started asking how long he had been planning to do it.